Hello, everyone. Welcome to training 2 of MSDL 2023. This training session is going to deal with WSDC, that is World School Debating Championship. So let's start with the structure first and how the speakers go in terms of order. So WSDC speaker order is going to be in the way which is back and forth. So proposition speaker first goes first, and then opposition second, opposition first speaker going next, and then second speaker from proposition, and then opposition second speaker, and then proposition third speaker, and then opposition third speaker. So it's basically a back and forth procedure where proposition speaker one starts, and then opposition speaker one. So it's basically like proposition, opposition, proposition, opposition, and then proposition, opposition. So this is the structure, and just follow the arrow, the way how the arrow takes you, and this is how you will be giving your speeches and will be invited to the stage. For example, hello everyone, I welcome you all to WSDC debate, and let's start with the debate. I'm going to invite the first speaker from proposition to start the debate here. So the first speaker is going to give the speech, and then after their speech is done, I'm going to say thank you for the speech. I would now like to invite opposition speaker one, and that's when you're supposed to speak. So you will be invited in the room in order for you to actually speak. So that's how the structure essentially works. On this particular structure, are there any doubts? And I'm going to ask you to keep your hands up. Jovan, what's your doubt?
So, ma'am, good evening. I had two doubts actually. So, the first one was that in WHDC, there's like a 15-second grace period. So, if you go 15 seconds overtime,
you do get that. Yes, you do get that.
And how do we ask POI? So, do we say POI?
I will come to that. Okay. Hunar.
So, ma'am, like speaker one starts his debate, take it as it's speaking against the motion. So, ma'am, I speak against for the motion. Speaker two will say that against something.
No, so proposition, the entire team is for the motion, and opposition, the entire team is against the motion, and you're supposed to keep team cohesion, which means that speaker one, speaker two, speaker three all are for the motion, and opposition, speaker one, speaker two, speaker three all are against the motion. So I hope that's clear. Okay, Tashri.
Yes, I actually had two doubts. My first doubt was that each speaker, like in a team, they have to speak for 4 minutes each, right?
Yes.
And my second doubt was that as and when we have to speak, will we be invited to the breakout room, or will the entire team be invited?
No, everybody listens to you because, for example, speaker one, when they speak, every other speaker is also in the room and they are going to listen to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sanvi?
Yes, ma'am. There are 3 speakers in the this format. So I know that I am one speaker and my friend is one speaker. But when we are trying to contact the third speaker, we do not have his number, nor is he responding on the group or on the chat. So how are we supposed to contact?
So how about you text the Indian Debating League number and tell them that you're not able to come into contact with them, and then the Indian Debating League number is going to tell you as to what is their contact number. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
All right. Rayan.
Miss, so how long do we get to introduce ourselves exactly?
You're not giving a long introduction. So like how I do it is just saying, hi, my name is Afreen. My preferred pronouns are she or they. If you have any pronouns, you can just give that. If you don't have pronouns, you can just be like, hi, my name is Afreen and my POI preference is in the chat box, which means that nobody's going to interrupt you. They're just going to keep the POI in chat. I'm going to come back to that later, but that's all. Like, you're just supposed to give your name. So I'm just going to say, I'm Rayan and I'm speaker one. That's all.
Miss, I also have another thing.
Yes.
Miss, when do you recommend we use rebuttals in our speech?
I will tell you about that as well. That's a really good question. Monica.
Hi, I was just curious about when will we know if we're prop and op for the first 2 rounds?
So first 2 round is anyways prop and op. So you're basically going to prepare for it against anyways, but you're going to get about which particular round are you for and against just 15 minutes prior to the round.
15 minutes? Okay, thank you.
All right. Sakshi Bishnoi.
Good evening, ma'am.
Tell me.
Ma'am, I had a few questions. Ma'am, first is that, ma'am, like we have prepared for the both the sides, and if I'm the opposition speaker one, and if the person in the proposition has given some points which are not in my format or whatever I have prepared, so can you suggest a few things regarding that?
I mean, research it in such a way that you're able to respond to everything, and that's how like most people do it. So just have a logic to everything that you think can be rebutted. So I mean, that's the suggestion. But is there any other question?
Yes, ma'am. And can you please give like a rough structure, like how much time we should give for POIs and how to
Sure,
start?
sure. I would do that. I would do that. Is there any more like? Are there any more questions specific to structure? If there are no questions specific to the structure, just like keep your hands down, because I'm sure I would basically give you answers to a couple of questions which would be already answered once I teach you what WSDC is. Alia Abbas, I'm sorry if I'm watching.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, so for example, if like I'm in a team of 3 members and then it's like versus 3. So like is my whole team gonna speak for like a particular proposition and the other one will speak for opposition, or there will be like 2 for proposition and 2 like 1 for opposition or something of that sort?
Everybody speaks proposition or opposition, so your team is gonna get a side, right? So it's your team which gets proposition or opposition. So nobody, as I said, team cohesion is important. So all speakers speak for, or all speakers go against.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Ekam Suri.
Yeah. Are we allowed to be on a separate call with our teammates?
Yes, you are.
And we can mute on the main call?
No, you're supposed to listen to it because you would want to rebut your opponents.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Also, when we are giving our POI preference, have to give it when our debate has when our speech has started, or can we give it before we start our speech?
Whoever is doing that, don't do that on the screen. Ansh, I can see that it's you. Okay. Yes, Ekam, what were you saying?
When we're giving our POI preference, do we have to while our debate has started, or can we give it before we start?
Before your speech starts, because it's just difficult to track otherwise, right?
All right, thank you.
Okay. Chirayu, what's your question?
Actually, ma'am, today the WSDC, the teams were sent, so we had only 2 speakers in our team. So what to do?
So we'll assign another speaker to you as soon as we get one, because it's based on registration. So if we get another person, we will assign it to you. Otherwise, start preparing right now as itself. You would get, so if in the worst case scenario, if you don't have a third speaker, one speaker gets to give 2 speeches. So speaker 1 can give speaker 3 speech as well, but your speakers scores are going to be considered in such a way that the best speech that you give, for example, your first speech was better than the third speaker, then you would be basically marked on that rather than the third speech.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Cool. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. Let's move to WSDC debate format specifically. So WSDC is a debate format with 2 sides debating against each other. So you would basically, when you get your draws, you would see what position you are in, whether you're for or against, but you would also see which team is against you, and you would also know about their team composition. So you would essentially be against one team, all right? The second thing that you need to know is that all 3 speakers are supposed to work in collaboration. It's not an individual event. If you qualify as a team. Otherwise, you don't qualify at all, which means that if a person thinks that I'm just supposed to like research by myself and give the best speech and I'm going to be the best speaker, that's not how WSDC works. You're supposed to help your other speakers and partners to prepare their speeches. You're supposed to give them points. If you have extra points, if you have good rebuttals, you're supposed to give it to them. This is how it works. But the second thing that you need to know is that your adjudicator scale is going to be 67 to 83, which is basically your mark. Remember, it was manner, matter, and method. It's going to be not 10 each. It's going to be 30 each. So you're going to be marked out of 90 and not out of 30. Okay. The next thing that you need to know is that the motions are going to be different in each round. However, it's going to be like all of the rounds are actually going to be prepared for you. So don't think about this right now. So this is how it looks like, and this is how in practical world the debate formats work. So speaker time is 4 minutes. First speaker will speak, then you'll have 15 seconds of grace for the second speaker, so that is speaker 1 of team 2, and then 15 seconds of grace period. And then again, there's going to be proposition speaker 2, 15 seconds of grace period, team opposition speaker 2, then team proposition speaker 1, speaker 3, and then team opposition speaker 3. This is how the flow is going to look like. Then let me give you a couple of tips and tricks before I actually go on with the criteria. So for example, remember for each speech, there's a specific way to introduce and specific way to actually go ahead and like make your speeches. So each speech is supposed to have an introduction and conclusion and body, right? Introduction, body, and conclusion, right? So these 3 things you should have in your speech. But there are different types of introduction for each speaker. So let's start with the first speakers from both sides. If you are the first speaker, you're supposed to have definitions of the motion. For example, there are a couple of words that you don't understand or you think are very ambiguous. So you're supposed to give a characterization to that. For example, if a motion is about India should support Russia in the war, I would first try to give a contextualization as to what the war looks like and why Russia essentially is in war with the Ukraine. The second thing I would want to do is like, why and what are the relationship that exists between India and Russia. So the introduction is basically a background of what the motion is and what is the definition to the motion. So remember that in terms of WSDC. The second thing, and that's the introduction of the first speaker, all right? And that's going to be different, right? So proposition could say differently in terms of what the word looks like. Opposition could just rephrase this in a different way in terms of the first speaker. In terms of your body then, for the first speakers, what you're supposed to do is have at least 4 arguments being listed. So you're supposed to give a brief understanding of what your arguments are. So I would say I have 4 so we on proposition are going to present to you 4 arguments and you would just list out the arguments. After that, you would say, I am going to cover first 2 arguments and my second speaker is going to cover the second 2 arguments. That way you have different content to cover from first and second speech, all right? So what I would do in first speech is I will give an introduction to the motion and then I will cover and I'll give a list of arguments that the entire team is going to present. And after that, I'm going to give explanation to the 2 arguments that are particularly for me. How do you explain these arguments then? So what you do in terms of arguments is that you first tell the heading of the argument and then you try to explain it through different ways. You can give logical explanations, you can give statistics if you want to, and then you give examples towards what your argument is. And you would want to do the same thing for every argument that you're going to do, right? So first speaker, I'm going to repeat it again. First, introduction to the motion. Second, give a list of arguments that your team entirely is going to cover. Second, cover the 2 arguments that you are going to present from first speech. And then third, you're going to give a conclusion. So in conclusion, you would say as to why whatever you said makes so much more sense and why whatever you said has an impact towards judges. For example, if I made a point of if we do not do so, a lot of people are going to die in my speech. And when I end my speech, I'm going to say that proposition in this debate has proved to you as to why we save more number of lives and therefore proposition is much better than opposition. So my conclusion is basically proving an impact to the judges in order to establish that why proposition is better than opposition. So in your conclusion, and this is for all of the speeches, whenever you conclude your speech, try to keep an impact on the judge's mind and tell them that why your side is much better than opposition side. So you can probably take the one biggest example or one biggest argument that you established in your speech. So it's not necessary for you to just use the same thing that your first speaker used. So use your own content and then say that why you win the debate. So this is for the first speaker. The second speaker is supposed to give an introduction. Now, the introduction of the second speaker is going to look like this. You would just basically give a brief understanding of what has happened till now of the debate. So I would just ask you a question, right? So proposition second speaker in the debate has heard how many speeches till now? So proposition second speaker, before their speech starts, how many speakers have they listened? Put in the chat box.
2.
Yes, it is 2, right? So
one of the proposition and one of the opposition.
Exactly. So what I would do is I would make a remark, right? And this remark is going to be specifically to what happened in the debate. For example, the remark could be, even though we gave you 2 arguments on proposition, opposition never responded to those arguments, which means that those 2 arguments still stand on side proposition. Or the other remark could be that opposition's argument is based on a fallacy. So it could be basically logical fallacy. It could just be like an example that was cherry picked and stuff like that, right? So you basically give observation about the speeches that have preceded you, and that's what your introduction looks like. Then what you would do on second speaker is basically give two arguments that were specific to your side. So the two arguments which is new and different from your first speaker, all right? So you would give the heading of the argument, you will explain the argument, you would give examples, statistics, reasonings, etc. And then you'd move to the second argument. After you're done with your arguments, what you would do is rebut your opponents. Now, how do you rebut your opponents? You can do two ways. One, you can either give the rebuttals before your arguments, which are the two arguments that you're supposed to cover, or you can go ahead and do it after your arguments are done. I would prefer it when you do it before your argument starts, because then you're completely first. So this way, right? If somebody punches you, in order for you to punch them back, you would want to first recover from the punch, and then you would punch them again, right? So the same way is how you make your speeches. You first try to recover from the attack that has been done by opposition. So you rebut them and then make your own positive case. So what you do in this term is that proposition or second speakers in general are first going to rebut the opposition entirely. So all of the things that they have said, you would want to disprove them. So you would have to prove them wrong in any ways whatsoever. So you can give counter examples, you can give counter reasonings, and so on and so forth. This is how you would just disprove whatever the opposition is saying, all right? So the structure, and I'm going to repeat for the second speaker, is going to look like introduction, which is basically the observation about the debate. Secondly, rebuttals to your opponents. Thirdly, it's going to be the positive material, which is the two arguments. And lastly, you would give a conclusion. So your conclusion is going to look like, hey, I've rebutted all of those points from opposition, but I've also give you more material to prove as to why proposition or opposition wins this debate. This is how your conclusion for the second speaker is going to go. The third speaker, and this is the last speaker, and this is going to be similar. The third speaker, the first thing that third speaker is supposed to give, again, observation about the debate till now, and then you're going to go ahead with your rebuttals if there's something that is still unresponded as third speaker. So what you would do is give all the rebuttals and then go on and summarize your case. How do you summarize your case? Remember, you had 4 arguments in the beginning. You're supposed to tell us to why those 4 arguments are so much more important than anything that opposition gave. So try to keep like a note of what opposition gave, and then try to compare as to what opposition gave did not make sense, or why opposition, whatever opposition said, had less value in the debate than what you said, right? So you would basically compare the entire debate and prove to the judges to why the judge should care and vote for you at the end of the debate. All right, this is the third speaker, and then you would conclude as to why you should win the debate. I think that's pretty much clear. I think there are so many questions in this. I would take those questions. Okay, Sarah, what's your left?
Yes, ma'am. I have the doubt that for team one, it's miss, like if suppose I am the speaker one in team one. So miss, if after me the opposition speaks, and miss, I have something to clarify, like after what the opposition speaks, and the speaker two doesn't know about it. So can I speak after the team two opposition?
No, you would tell the point to your teammate. So you would tell it to speaker 2 of your team, and then they are going to tell it in their speech.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, Ryan.
Miss, I prefer to do third speaker. So can you just give some important points that a third speaker should do? Second speaker, sorry.
Second speaker or third speaker?
Second.
Okay, second speaker. First thing, introduction about the debate in terms of what your observation was about proposition or opposition. The second thing is going to be rebuttals to your opponents. So try to rebut them. Okay, this is what their first point, but we think this. This was their second point. This, but we think this, and so on and so forth. Then you would give your positive material, which means the 2 arguments that you prepared for on the side that you were in. And then lastly, you would conclude your speech. I hope that's clear.
Miss, so there should be 6 arguments in all, because each speaker is doing 2 arguments.
No, so the third speaker does not give any new arguments, right?
Miss, so the third speaker just summarizes everything.
Summarizes and rebuts to opponents, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Alia Abbas.
Ma'am, you can call me Ali.
Alia, okay, go.
Ma'am, I just want to ask, can you please give an example of a rebuttal question?
Okay, that's a good question. How about we do an exercise, and I'm going to give you a motion and you make a point, and then I'm going to rebut you.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, let's take a motion on Okay, my motion for you is this house would ban smoking. And you're going to say that, yes, we should ban smoking. What is your point?
A lot of scientific proof, a lot of scientifics like science has proven that smoking is really bad for our lungs. It can cause lung cancer, and plus it has nicotine, which is a really addictive chemical.
Okay, that's your point. I would like to respond to that. Since opposition believes that smoking is extremely addictive, I'm unsure as to why this addiction specifically is going to stop just by banning off the smoking, which means that people would now find out different ways in order to access cigarettes through black market, which is even more harmful, because when it is through black market, you cannot see what content it has or what kind of like registration or which company or which kind of industry has made it, which is when it becomes extremely more like even more harmful. But secondly, the amount of tax that government can potentially get from smoking industry is really, really high, which means that the revenue that government gets is extremely high in terms of them being able to have better structures in terms of, let's say, public infrastructure for hospitals, right? Which is much better for people who are suffering from bad health, which is why in our side of the house you can still have good health. But insofar as like smoking is concerned, you can't stop people from accessing smoking just by banning it. But secondly, on the idea that even if you would want to ban it, for example, even if plastic is banned in certain places of India, you still get to see the usage of plastic, which means that you can always have like the black market access to plastic, which is even worse in the first place, and then there's no revenue. So that's how you can just remove. I hope that's clear.
Ma'am, you clearly destroyed me.
Okay, don't say that. Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am, I had a doubt in this one only.
Okay, go on.
So, ma'am, just like Alia said, and you like said in opposition. So, ma'am, is she going to speak again, or the speaker?
No, she won't speak again, but the second speaker is gonna go ahead and try to like respond to me, right?
Okay. So, ma'am, the speaker too is going to like kind of oppose you and like try to prove you wrong.
Yes, they're going to prove me wrong. Yes, they're going to give me counter response.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
so ma'am, it's not going to be like all of the speakers of a team gives like kind of a, what do we say? We just give a long subject about it, and the other speaker says it afterwards.
I mean, it's not all long subject, but it's a lot of it, like a lot of our debate is impromptu. So you're supposed to change your speech, you're supposed to change your responses on the spot. So,
okay, ma'am.
Manas, what's your doubt?
Good evening, ma'am. Actually, I had two doubts. Miss, first is that you said manner, method, and matter all are 30 marks each.
Yes.
So total it's 90 marks. But in your description, it was written that it is on a scale of 67 to 83, I think. So
yes. Because that's just to make sure that nobody is marked extremely low, like below 67, but also nobody can get 90 in WSDC ever.
Okay, so it's not possible to score full?
Yes, it's not possible to score 83 as well.
Oh, it's like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unless a speech is something that has changed your life, you can't get 83.
Ma'am, but even if one speech is like that, the other two are not, then also you won't get, right?
No, you will get, like, because individual scores are regardlessly there, right? So first speaker has given a speech which changed my opinion on like smoking, I would give them 83. But other speakers were like, okay, then I'll give them less.
Oh, okay. And Miss, I also wanted to ask that the rebutting we can do after the first proposition speaks. Suppose we are opposition, then after the first speaker speaks, and between the grace period, can we rebut?
No, you cannot.
So when do we rebut?
You rebut in second speech and third speech. So you give your points to the second speaker, or you ask them through POIs, which takes me to the question of POI. Let's start with that. So let me just like finish all of it, and then I'm going to come to you in terms of more questions. Okay. So let's start with POI, and I'm going to give you a practical example of how POIs work. So POIs are basically point of information where you ask question to your opposition. Okay. You cannot ask question to your own teammates. You can only ask questions to your opposition, which looks like speaker one can, any speaker from proposition can ask any speaker from opposition any question. But how do you ask that? So you're supposed to offer it, and there are different ways how you're supposed to offer it. First, I'm going to do this with my camera on, right? So I'll just put my hands up. Speaker can see. If they want to take it, they will say, yes, I can take your POI. But if they don't want to take my POI, they'll say, no, I reject it. So that's all. So it's not like an obligation for the speaker to take the POI. It's just going to be offering and rejecting. But if you want to take POI and that's more encouraged, take the POI and answer that question. For example, the question could be related to their case, or the question could be basically a clarification, or the question could be, let's say, I can ask a question in a motion which is saying that illicit drugs should be banned. I could ask the question as to like, but how would you solve the problem of black market? And then they're supposed to answer that question. Okay. So the question could be anything, but it's supposed to be very, very like polite, and you're not supposed to be rude to them when you're asking the question. So there are 3 things that you can do when people have asked you question. You can say, yes, I can take your POI. You can say no, or you can just simply ignore and just not respond to anything, right? But the second way to ask POI is POI. But when you do so, you're not supposed to go ahead and continuously say POI, 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 because the other person is speaking and it's going to be very distracting. So what you do in terms of that is that you say POI and then stop for 30 seconds and then offer another POI. The third way to ask POI is in the chat box. So I would go to the chat box and I would put POI. That's all. And then the speaker can see it. If they want to take it, they will say, yeah, POI. So how is it relevant is that before I start my speech, I would say, hi, my name is Afreen. My POI is visually, so just wave at me and I'm going to take your POI. Or my POI is verbally, so just ask me a question verbally. Or my question could be in the chat box, so just put POI in the chat box. So this is how you're supposed to keep it. But there is a specific time and at what, like on which you can ask a POI. So for you, the time is 4 minutes, right? So you can start asking POIs once 1 minute, 1 second starts and once 2 minutes, 59 seconds ends. So you cannot ask POI for the speaker for the first minute and the last minute, because that's the protected time. So you would want to first listen to what the speaker is saying in order for you to ask a question. But at the end, you would want to keep the time for them being able to summarize their speech as well. So this is how POIs are actually. But yes, it's not a specific way like you're supposed to like take it or not. It's on you, but we always encourage people to take POIs because it enhances like engagement. So if you're able to answer that question, judges are going to give you good marks, right? But secondly, I mean, we would say that like minimum take 1 POI, maximum take 2 POIs, don't take a lot of POIs as well, because you would want to focus on your own content as well. But yeah, that is pretty much it in terms of POIs. Let's now talk about criteria for adjudication. There is again 3 things, 30 each: matter, manner, and method. Matter is the content, which means that your arguments, your reasoning, your logical reasoning, your examples, all of it, was it relevant to the motion? All of it is going to be seen. Manner is the way how you presented, your body language, your eye contact, all of that. And then your method is going to be, did you stick to the time limit? Did you elaborate your point better? Did you have like good POI engagement? Did you have rebuttals? And was it a natural flow? Was it a good structure? Did you follow introduction, body, and outro structure, or did you not follow it? So all of it is going to be seen with respect to that. Now, last thing that I want to just finish in terms of WSDC is equity rules. Now, I understand that debating is a very, very passionate activity, and this is when people change their behaviors and get really aggressive. But what you're supposed to keep a check on is that be as nice to your opponents as possible. You're going to question their arguments and not their character or not them personally. You can't be like, opposition in this debate was stupid. You're not supposed to say all of that. But what you can do is why their arguments did not make sense, right? So you're questioning their arguments, but not their ability to make arguments. So just be mindful of that. No rude behavior is going to be taken, or no rude or in terms of any kind of like bad behavior is going to be seen. So you cannot cuss, you cannot go ahead and shout, you can't be aggressive, you can't heckle. Heckling is basically when you continuously keep POI, POI, POI in the chat box, or when you continuously just like tell them that POI, POI through verbal noise. If you're going to do that, you're going to be disqualified from the tournament. So do not do that. So remember, the period between a POI to the other is 30 seconds. You cannot offer POI otherwise. But in case if anyone has a problem in the tournament, please write it to Nitiksha Tyagi ma'am. You would search her number in the WhatsApp group. So if you have any complaints, you can just like to talk to them. But yes, this is pretty much it in terms of that. I would engage with questions in just a bit.